Welcome to Fastrack Technology's official podcast, the FTM. I'm your host, Hayden van Roon. The last 12 months have shaken many organisations to their core. Normal life has stopped for more than 1 billion people, and employers have shut their offices all across the globe. Companies like Twitter, Facebook, and Shopify have told employees they can work from home permanently if they choose to. Over 4.3 million Australians have been working from home since the beginning of the pandemic, and as a result, office vacancies around the country have increased to their highest levels in 2 decades. Australian workers will continue to work from home this year, with 60% saying they will work remotely 2 to 3 days a week, even after the restrictions have eased. Although many businesses have accelerated their adoption of remote working and collaboration technologies, the challenges for technology leaders continue to mount. Widespread adoption of remote working technologies has also introduced new challenges to organizations' network, connectivity, and security capabilities. In this podcast, we'll discuss the trends technology leaders are using to tackle these challenges. To help me, I've invited Fastrack Technology's General Manager of Technology, Arun Ramprasad. Welcome, Arun.
Hi, Hayden.
Thanks for joining us. I think this is your first podcast for 2020, right?
I think so. I've been listening to all Fastrack's podcast, and I've been fighting with you guys for a chance to feature in one of the podcasts.
We've got your wish, so thanks so much. We know your time is really valuable, and we really appreciate your time. So thanks and welcome. Can you tell us a bit about what your role is?
So I'm the General Manager Technology here in Fastrack. So my team is responsible for product development, technology strategies, technology design, pre-sales, DevOps, and any transformational projects. So it's there's a lot of hats that my team wears here in Fastrack.
So to enable remote working, technology leaders need to develop an IT operating model that supports staff everywhere. Anywhere operations is a trend that appeared in late 2020, and that's really focused on solving this challenge. So Arun, what does anywhere operations mean?
So Hayden, I'd like to take you back to 2016 when I joined Fastrack, right? So that was the first time I received an offer letter with the wording saying, feel free to work from a beach anywhere, put down your feet on the sand or in the water and work from anywhere, right? I was so excited about being able to be productive and work from anywhere, because those days, it was a trend that people have to come to office, and remote working was not widely adopted. And although people started seeing the importance of remote working and all that, right? So in those contexts, anywhere operations, it's literally for our workforces to be able to work anywhere and be productive and use those tools and applications that they use on a day-to-day life.
Arun, how is the anywhere operations model different to the modern workplace model?
The anywhere operations model, it's pretty much our distributed workforces. They are able to work anywhere from a beach or from a different geographic location altogether and still be able to perform their work. And they will have these applications hosted in a cloud environment, in a data center, or in an on-premise, right? But a modern workplace is those workplaces who are able to understand how these anywhere operations work, and they understand the need for tools and applications that enable their workforces to be productive, engaged, and collaborative. So those organizations pretty much, we call those organizations or workplaces who recognize that these are all important as the modern workplace, and those who are willing to adapt to these kind of applications and tools that enable productivity, engagement, and collaboration of their remote workplaces, that workplaces are called modern workplaces.
And so what are the benefits of adopting an anywhere operations model?
Let us look at it from a business perspective, right? So from a business perspective, imagine the first thing is the real estate cost, right? So previously you used to have a big office with 100 employees or 200 employees or more than that's coming into the office. So that means there's a lot more of operating cost in terms of infrastructure, real estate and bills and all those other things, right? And then, so that is a major, now people have started thinking about co-working spaces. or hot desking within the downsize the number of floors in their office building and now have hot desking available so people can come in and use the desks that are available. And also the trend has become that from an employee welfare perspective, there's a lot of benefits for these employees because they now feel like, for example, today, a lot of Australians here, on an average, they spend 1 to 2 hours in travel these days, right? So they get back that 1 to 2 hours of time in travel and are able to spend time with their families.
Yeah.
So employee welfare and benefits are something that has been, which in turn makes them more productive, more happy, and they're not looking for change of job or roles. So that is a big benefit for the businesses. And then the other thing is the 24/7 support model. Say, for example, today, there can be enterprises and organizations here in Australia where they have their customer bases around the world. And previously, it was hard for them to provide 24/7 support because, say, if there is someone in US during their business hours, it's kind of like a night time in Australia. And these employees were not able to provide that service because they had to come to work at night and all that, which is not feasible and scalable, right? So, but now with anywhere operations, the constraint on geography is gone now. There is no boundaries anymore. You could have some employees, you could hire some employees even in India or Philippines or anywhere in the world to be able to work for the same organization. And it's same as anyone working from Melbourne or Sydney or Perth nowadays, and be able to provide support 24/7 for various services that they offer or internally for their IT team. So that is one of the other major benefits that anywhere operations brings into the picture for businesses.
And so I can imagine that there's a number of applications that like make all this possible. What are the key applications we're talking about when we're talking about enabling an anywhere operations model?
So let's talk about, like I said, we have engagement. To engage the workforces, there are a lot of these tools and applications which are there. And then from a collaboration perspective, say, for example, there is all these Teams meetings and all those other things, Zoom, Slack, and all those places where they collaborate with everyone else. And then obviously these video conferencing room systems and all those, and even these webcams and all that helps them, say, a person working remotely from home is able to join a Teams conference call through their webcam video conferencing. And then if there are few of the workforces still working out of the office, they are able to use the video conference units and all those other things, which are basically cloud-based solutions. And also, say, from a productivity perspective, we are talking about tracking Kanban boards and agile boards and all those other things. There are Trello, which is a cloud service-based
Planner
application. We use Planner and all those different Microsoft Office suites, right? So there's a lot of these SaaS-based applications and tools which are in the market currently, where it enables everyone to be distributed and still be engaged and collaborative.
So Arun, what are some of the barriers technology leaders might expect to experience when they're transitioning to an anywhere operations model?
So one of the biggest barrier that I see, Hayden, is most of the technology leaders, businesses, for instance, they had built an infrastructure, policies and applications and tools from an infra-centric peace of mind. So they had an infrastructure, a data center, branch offices. They build their applications inside the data center or in the some within the branches itself. And then they had the security policies and everything built based on all this infrastructure. Yeah. The resources, the people, and everything came to these infrastructures, like to the branches or to the data center, and collaborated and communicated, and everything was revolving around this. Now, all of a sudden, in the last 1.5 years, because of the pandemic, now the focus has turned to people-centric, resource-centric model. So you have no choice. We cannot bring everyone together in one single place for them to perform their day-to-day duties, to be productive and help the business operate, right? So now we have to take the business to these people wherever they are and that means we have to have tools available that help in doing this. And that is one of the biggest challenges here. And a lot of these organizations uses legacy tools and in-house softwares and all those things. Now all of a sudden the users are all distributed everywhere, and then we need to move it into a cloud-based service. And then if it is a cloud-based service, that legacy application might not be suitable to migrate to a cloud-based service. So those are some of the challenges that they constantly see. And most importantly, like I said, because it was infra-centric, everything, all the security policies were implemented on that infra-centric model. But now with applications needs to be moved to the cloud, and then some of the applications needs to stay within the data center and all that, and then they have their workforces and end users spread everywhere. That, I feel, is one of the biggest challenges that has been introduced in the anywhere operations world that we are living in today.
So you make some good points, Arun, and I think part of the anyway operations model is that it's an operating model that traditional wide area networks really weren't designed to handle. So we really need, and it's evident in what you were talking about, where we need new connectivity models that can support the modern workplaces or the anywhere operations model. But as organizations increase the number of remote workers and expand their office locations, wide area networks continue to feel the strain. So, Arun, what's the role of a wide area network in modern network design?
A traditional wide area network is literally connecting the data center to the different branches. So an organization might have 10 different branches spread across a certain geographical area, and they all might be connecting to a data center or a pair of data centers, right? And in a traditional environment, networking, all these users in the branch offices, for them, if they have to access the internet, they would go through the data center, and then it egresses out to the outside world through the data center, which is pretty much the network edge, which was called the perimeter of an organization network. This was simple, this was efficient, because there was only one way to get out from the network and get into the network. So there were a lot of security features and policies and implemented on that edge of the network, and the resources, the IT techs within the business, they felt confident managing the business because they felt they had control of the entire organization. Even though if they are spread across, it all goes out of a specific egress point, and so they were able to control and manage it. It's the trend right now where people also wants to be able to be productive and work from anywhere, right? So there were always used to be a discussion about should we allow flexible workplaces and all those other things. We had always had that conversation, but now we are forced to implement those kind of models, right? What has introduced is now we do not know what is the perimeter of the network now. We cannot, if you ask me to define what is the perimeter of a network now, it's very hard to determine, because imagine if you are based out of Melbourne, and then we have some of our employees based out of Sydney, and then there are a few employees based outside of Australia, and all those people, if we force them to VPN to the data center, and then remote access, and then from the data center access the internet and other workloads, their experience is not going to be that great. Now, we need to move away from the fact that the perimeter of the network is the data center. And also imagine now we have applications which are cloud-based. So we have moved a lot of our applications and data to the cloud, right? And now, to be able to access those applications in the cloud, it does not make sense for the users to be able to connect to the data center and then from there egress out to the cloud interface, right? That means they're going to have poor experience. Like I said, the whole concept of these anywhere operations, modern workplace is resource-centric and no more infrastructure-centric. So if you have to go to the resource-centric model, that means they should have better experience, and for that they need to have better connectivity, which means the perimeter of the network is kind of distributed everywhere. That means the perimeter, you could call the perimeter as the edge of the cloud's edge as one of the perimeters, and then the data center as another perimeter. So there are different edge networks being introduced there, and now we should be able to provide connectivity solutions or WAN solutions that cater to all this kind of to this evolving trend.
That's a lot of challenges you've just summarized there, Arun, and I feel like, basically the crux of it is that the traditional way of managing networks just doesn't work anymore. And so what are the trends you're seeing in the way that technology leaders are using to address these challenges?
From a connectivity perspective, Hayden?
Yes.
So from a connectivity perspective, the most important challenge is, say, before the branch officers used to connect to the data center, and for that you needed to buy expensive MPLS links and all those things, right? Mm-hmm. And now one of the evolving trend is, says these MPLS links are expensive, or if one of your branch offices is in a remote location where there is not much access to last mile fibers. So 5G is one of the biggest trends that is happening in the connectivity space, and which means through 5G you use the internet or you use tunnels and create tunnels and all those things, but you have bigger bandwidth. You can get a 1 gig internet, or you can get speeds of 50 Mbps, 500 Mbps, 600 Mbps, and all that from a 5G connection.
And 5 years ago, that was just impossible, right?
Definitely. And the next evolving trend is now the way, like I said, the perimeter has expanded, and now we have applications in the cloud. Yeah. We have applications in the data center, which means we still need the WAN, because from a data sensitivity point of view, and there might be requirement for organizations to have some of the critical applications still housed in their data centers. And also from a connectivity perspective, it might have made a logical sense for the applications to be in the data center, because the endpoints which uses those applications needs to be closer to the server. You get what I mean? Yeah, so yeah, latency is important. And there are multiple reasons why enterprises have certain applications still under their control: data protection, data integrity, and all those other things, right? And so those are the things still stays in the data center. And then we still have some of the cloud hosted solutions for us to be able to connect to all these different distributed workloads from the branches, or connecting these different different branches and data center together. One of the important evolving trend is SD-WAN. So SD-WAN makes it happen in such a way that we can be able to connect to data center, cloud, and to different cloud service providers, other vendors, and all those things in a secure and a more efficient way.
Arun, you talked about SD-WAN, and you talked about branch networking. I'm hearing that there's a bit of a trend towards SD, or software-defined branch networking. Can you tell us a little bit about that trend?
It all comes from the SD-WAN initiative, right? So what is in a branch? So from a tradition, like I mentioned, in a traditional office space, there is these branches which usually just connect to the data center, right? So we addressed how the last mile connectivity challenges are there for a lot of these branches, and now SD-WAN kind of technologies, they solve the last mile connectivity problems. You are not just dependent on MPLS links and all that. You could use internet. It depends on, it doesn't matter what your underlay is. Underlay is what is that underlying physical connection that connects to your branch offices, right? So it is, SD-WAN mainly talks about connecting a branch to your data center, connecting your branch to a cloud or something like that, right? So, but it doesn't say, it's about the edge of your branch network connecting to something else. From an SD branch perspective, what happens is what is inside your branch, like your switches, your Wi-Fi access points, and all those different things, which are managed but in a single pane of glass. So it's like you have a SD branch appliance, which kind of provides the perimeter of your network, which even does your SD-WAN capabilities as well, and also be able to provision the switches, your access points, and all those things in one touch, and apply policies within your branch. And also you could apply policies on those SD branch appliances to connect to the cloud and implement those security policies, contextual policies, organizational contextual policies, and all those things, which makes the branch completely independent from other infrastructure, other piece of infrastructure. A lot of these organizations, they have moved almost all their applications to the cloud. And if they have moved all those applications to the cloud, they don't need a data center anymore, right? So if they don't need a data center anymore, all they need is for their branch offices to be able to access those applications in the cloud and be able to provide a single pane of management within their branch offices. So that is what is that SD branch capability. And but the underlying concept of both SD-WAN and SD branch is pretty much the same, which is basically a single pane of glass in network management, and we have that automated ability for the appliance to be able to detect and push changes in policies across or route traffic across.
So what are the advantages of SD-WAN over traditional routing?
In a traditional routing, Hayden, what happens is we have an organization, a branch office might have an MPLS connection to their data center. They might have another internet connection or another second redundant MPLS connection, point-to-point connection to their data center, right? So if you have to route traffic, you have to choose either the primary link or the secondary link, or manually have to load balance the traffic across, right? So say if one of the MPLS links or the point-to-point links, there is a congestion on that link, or it has degraded performance on that link, we can't do anything about it. The traditional networking still chooses that path because that link is still up and active, right? Even though this performance has degraded, there are congestion happening in that link and all that. If you put on the SD-WAN hat, these SD-WAN appliances are pretty smart, where they have the ability to determine these kind of congestion, latencies, and all those things. And you can set policies on these appliances and say, if there is this much of packet loss, if this much of latency, or if you detect this much of congestion, jitter, and all those other things, move over to the other link. Right? So it automatically, it detects, it keeps polling, it detects these kind of issues and then automatically moves it over. So this is kind of like the automated approach. So if someone has to manually check all these things and then move it across, it's going to take a lot of time and effort and do all those things, right? This is just one example of it. And then from a traditional networking perspective, like I said, it is important for, to know what type of connection it is, an MPLS connection or point-to-point or internet, and the performance is dependent on these connections. But with SD-WAN, it does not care about the underlying infrastructure. So because it has the automated ability to create tunnels on top of these underlays, and SD-WAN, you can determine, you can just imagine that all these links are called underlays, and the SD-WAN capability is kind of like an overlay on top of these links. Say for example, if you have critical applications that need good bandwidth and no jitters and all those other things, you can push those traffic out through the MPLS link. If you have non-critical applications such as just accessing Google or some other non-critical workloads that are either in your data center or in the cloud, you can push them out through the internet link. You have all these options to move the traffic between those various links. So that is one of the biggest advantage that SD-WAN does automatically without manual intervention. You just have to set those policies, and then SD-WAN does all those things.
A big part of the value too is that you have these, you design your network, but the network design is limited by real world things that happen to it. And so SD-WAN sounds like it really considers, okay, realistically links aren't perfect, and we're going to put in place something to cover the incidents that might happen in the real world. So that sounds like a really useful technology.
Yeah. It determines what is the best available link for moving this application, and then if it is a critical application, it chooses the best available link, and if it is a non-critical application, I don't care about if it the quality of link that goes on that. So it helps in load sharing and all those things.
It's some really good points you make there, and I think as you might imagine, obviously anywhere operations has a lot of implications for network and connectivity, but it also has some really big implications for cybersecurity. So these implications are really compounded by the increased rate of cyber attacks we've witnessed over the pandemic. One cyber attack is reported every 10 minutes in Australia, and globally attacks increased by over 50% in the same period. So as a result, more than half of technology leaders say they have accelerated their security projects. Arun, what are the cybersecurity threats most likely to affect businesses in the anywhere operations model?
Hayden, like you mentioned, cybersecurity is the biggest challenge and problem now. Before I answer this question, I wanted to highlight how you rightly said how much cybersecurity threats are increased over the last 1 year, and that's mainly because how all these organizations scampered through to move these workloads to the cloud so that their employees can access those workloads and all that, and they didn't think about the security posture of these applications. And as a result, they did end up achieving moving certain things to the cloud, but not from a security perspective, and that is one of the biggest reasons. And also the employees, imagine you previously had just 10% or 20% of the workforce usually sitting in working remotely, right? But now all of a sudden more than 75% of the workload is working remotely,
or in some cases 100%.
Exactly. And now they also don't know some of the best practices, or what they should do, what they should not do, and
some people who have never worked from home before.
Yes. And those infra-centric security policies that was there no longer applicable, because they used to have red zones. This is your red zone, this is your green zone, and now people know, okay, these are green zones, I could access these things. These are red zones, I cannot access these things. But now with anywhere operations and people everywhere, there is now it has now introduced something called a gray zone. Nobody knows which is if they should have access to this or not, and all those things. There's no clear defined policies and all those things, and that is where there's a lot of these attackers are taking advantage of these systems, and they are compromising most of these systems and the end user devices and things like that, right? Coming back to your question on what are the top cybersecurity threats that we are facing in this. One of the biggest the few of the things that I could think of is social engineering, right? Social engineering, you can say phishing attack, or quid pro quo. Say for example, someone calls and says, hey, your password has expired and you need to log in immediately to change your password, right? Or they could say your Amazon Prime subscription has expired and you need to pay now straight away. Oh, there's a lot of things, right? So people fall trapped to it. And there's a lot of these they don't have sophisticated tools and all those things to make these kind of attacks. All they use is just make random calls. And people now being panicked, and because of that gray zone, they think that their organization is calling to reset their password or whatever it is, right? So that is one of the social engineering attacks, phishing attacks, the emails, it looks so legitimate. And the next thing is these ransomwares, right? Ransomwares, it's really crazy. Just in last year, University of California, they had a ransomware attack. They did a COVID-19 research and all those research data were under ransomware attack, and they demanded more than $1 million. And the third thing is the DDoS attacks, enterprise networks and all those things. DDoS is pretty common. Some of the systems say they use certain malwares, compromised system to create these botnets and all those things. And then in various systems, which we think that system is working perfectly, but then because it is unpatched, it is used as a botnet. And then recently AWS, they said they averted a 2 Tbps DDoS attack, which was coming from different distributed endpoints throughout.
So that's TBPS, right?
TBPS, terabits per second, right? So this is where the world we are in currently, and it's not just small enterprises we are talking about. It's like big giants are also under massive attacks.
And if you look at all the vendors out there, there are so many different technologies out there that you can look at and pick from to say, oh, I've got to deploy this, deploy that. And what we're seeing is that there is a convergence happening, I think, with these technologies. And one of the biggest buzzwords in cybersecurity right now is SASE, right? Which is one of my favorite security technology names to say, which stands for Secure Access Service Edge. So what is SASE technology, and what's involved with it?
SASE, like you said, secure access. So all the different access and endpoints, user devices, and all those things, they need to be secure. And then the service edge, like I said, there's no longer a single edge, which usually used to be the data center where all the security postures used to be there. And now the edge there are multiple edge, like cloud edge, data center edge. In some places, even the branch itself is an edge with SD branch and all those things, right? Oh, yeah. So there are multiple edges being created, and there should be security policies that needs to be applied to the access as well as to the edge. Previously, all the security policies were on the infra-centric, just on those pair of firewalls that are in the data center, and now these security policies and controls and everything needs to be taken to the access side as well as to the edge side. So that is that is what is the buzzword. So SASE is more than a technology, Hayden. It is a strategy, right? So how do you approach security in an anywhere operations model, and whatever strategy that we implement for that anywhere operations model, the buzzword they are calling it is SASE. Lot of vendors define SASE differently. So some say, look, you need to access the cloud and the cloud protection, whatever workloads that are in your cloud, and those security controls that protects your workloads in the cloud, the cloud-based security controls is SASE. But then some other vendors and enterprises interpret it differently. SASE is not just protecting your it's not just a cloud-based solution that protects your cloud workloads, but also there are these on-prem workloads and data center workloads and all that which needs to be protected, and the whole strategy that is involved and security controls that are put in constitutes SASE.
So if I was to go to some other cybersecurity professionals out there and I ask them what the biggest buzzword in cybersecurity is right now, they might say zero trust. So how does SASE and zero trust interact?
Zero trust is a methodology, right? Say, for example, before in an infra-centric world, anything behind the firewalls, they called it trusted network, right? You could move the data from one end to the other, and it's all trusted. And they consider it as trusted, the green zones, right? Those data that you cannot move too easily, they are put in a red zone called a DMZ or something like that, right? So, but what has happened is currently now all these distributed workloads are, first of all, not in the data center. Some of the workloads are in the cloud, and some of these end users who are not sitting behind the firewall but outside the firewall, right? So that means accessing these workloads and all those things, it is no longer easy to create just that green and red zone and say you cannot move data to this and to this segment, kind of thing, right? So that zero trust is basically they're changing the way. Instead of saying I trust everything that is behind my firewalls, which is within my network, and then applying certain policies and security controls for certain things which needs to be controlled. Instead of that, they are going with a methodology where they are saying, look, I won't trust anything. I won't trust one user communicating to another user. So I need to put security controls and policies with from that point of view. where I don't trust anything at all. That is called zero trust.
We have a question that says, what differentiates SASE from other security models? But I feel like you've already answered that.
Yeah, so from a SASE perspective, Hayden, what happens is SASE, like I said, is a strategy.
Yeah.
Zero trust is a methodology for certain things, right? So zero trust fits inside the SASE model. Zero trust is one of the mechanisms where you can implement SASE. Right? That is one of the mechanisms which is an important mechanism as well to implement SASE. Yeah. So it is not only zero trust. There are other things like, say, the firewalls. Say all we know is these firewalls are in the data center, protecting your workloads in the data center and in the branches, right? Yeah. But then you are thinking about cloud-based firewalls where you might have built VMs and applications in AWS or Amazon or Azure, and then all those workloads can be protected within the cloud by building a pair of firewalls in the cloud, right? In your subscription tenant. So implementing firewalls where necessary, taking these firewalls to those different edges. And then there is zero trust, which we already said. And then there are secure web gateways. Say, for example, now all these distributed workforces, they are everywhere and they want to access internet. It doesn't make sense for them to connect to VPN to your data center and give them access to internet because their performance is going to be poor. They are going to have poor experience, right? So they should be able to access internet and other public cloud-based applications, but then there should be some kind of control, which is where the secure web gateway, they can be placed strategically in different edges where the users are located so that they can be directed to that web gateway, and then that web gateway implements your organizational policies. Say, for example, you are trying to access an insecure website. Or you are trying to access a website which our company does not endorse, something like that. So you can push those kind of security policies, organizational policies to those for them to access those things. So, and also improve their experience in terms of accessing other internet workloads, because you are not pushing everything into a data center and from there letting them access it, right? So these kind of secure web gateways. And then obviously the connection brokers, where for you to access the various applications in the cloud, you go through a secure connection broker, kind of like an app proxy, which protects the workloads and access and all those things.
So is SASE like a more holistic approach than zero?
Exactly. That is why we say it's a strategy, and zero trust is part of the SASE strategy.
Makes sense. Yeah. How does SASE solve the challenges introduced by anywhere operations?
So it kind of, my previous answers kind of answers this, Hayden. Say, for example, it doesn't really solve. It solves to an extent. So it is basically a strategy where we implement controls everywhere, right? But each SASE strategy and solution needs to be tailor-made and customized for each organization based on what kind of business they are, what industry they are in, and where their critical applications are, because too much of security controls would result in poor user experience as well. So you can go all blazing on your security strategy, and then the experience for the end user might be poor. So you need to find the balance between which industry you are in, what are your critical applications, where they are, where your users are, and where it makes sense to have these kind of, these different components that constitute SaaS.
Data is all that.
Yes, correct.
And so one of the challenges, we've come across at Fastrack when setting up a security operations center that utilizes zero trust or a SASE model is that because you're taking this holistic approach to security, you're considering all the different threats, which results in a lot of alerts. So then you have this new challenge where you've got all of this information about different levels of risks that are being introduced by users or new systems or new applications that are being introduced into your environment, and you now need a way to meaningfully action those. So what are the ways that security leaders can ensure that when they set up a SASE or a zero trust model, that they can generate actionable insights?
That's a very good point, Hayden. The thing is, there is we are using all these strategies currently. There are various tools and vendors who specialize in these different strategies that I said, right? Within the SASE, the different things, say web gateway or a firewall or connection broker or whatever it is, they might have different vendors and all those things. So having all the insights coming in from different vendors, these notifications popping up, yes, it is good to have all these threats and all those things popping up, but then all these show is what is happening, but they do not say why it is happening.
Yeah.
There is no context behind it, right? It can be an internal context or an external context or historical. Has this happened anywhere else? Is this IP which is attacking this interface? Is the same IP attacking different other? Has there been historical data where others have reported these kind of things? The intelligence is not there, so it makes it very hard for SOC teams to make actionable insights. So that is why it is very important for businesses to consider those solutions which offer threat intelligence, right? There are a lot of vendors in the market who provide threat intelligence. Basically, they just do not say what is happening, they say why it is happening as well. They provide context to it, so you know if you need to take action on it or not, right? It makes people's job easier. So it is very important for businesses to consider those kind of threat intelligence solutions where they can adapt to it and then be able to take action in a quick period of time, rather than trying to figure out if it needs to be action, and then the time to resolution is going to take longer, because longer the window, there's more greater the opportunity for the attack.
Well, thanks for that, Arun. It's very obvious that with anywhere operation, it introduces a lot of challenges for connectivity and security. And at the heart of everything we do, we need to be able to take action and predict challenges that are going to occur. And I think that's the big learning for me. And with 4.3 million Australians working remotely over the last 12 months, some technology leaders were obviously really prepared for these threats and thrived, and other leaders were forced to adapt just to ensure business continuity. And it's clear any operations model provides the flexibility for organizations to prosper in uncertain times. However, to fully embrace anywhere operations, technology leaders really need to build that dynamic, integrated network and security model to safeguard their data and their people. And so certainly with some of the technology trends you've talked about today, Roon, I think they would go a long way to not only enabling the anywhere operational model, but actually providing that security and network that underpins it all. And without that, the anywhere operations model just doesn't work. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, Arun. I learned a lot. There's a lot of insights that I think people can take away from that. So thanks so much for your time and wisdom today.
Thank you as well, Hayden. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for giving me a slot in your podcast show.
Anytime, mate. We'll get you back regularly. Don't worry. So that's all we have time for. Everyone, check for all the research that we kind of referenced today. That will be located in the show notes of the various podcast platforms you'll be using to watch us today. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the F Team. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts from, and the video is also available on our website, www.ftpl.com.au. See you next time.